UCLA is ready to shock the world again.
Nah, Indiana says not so fast.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, and it is a Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and UCLA. I'm Jacob Goins, host of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, host of Locked On UCLA. Tons to get to on this show today. It's brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling for the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda Move and Be Moved. Well, we got a big matchup this week between Indiana and UCLA. The Hoosiers are the second-ranked team in the country, and UCLA, I don't know what the heck they are. They've just completely cleaned house. They've turned it all around, and that's where we start today's show, Zach, with you hopefully can explain what the changes have been for UCLA and what they've meant for UCLA, because Curt Cignetti said this week, this is a 3-0 Bruins team, not 4-3, 3-0, and that's how the Hoosiers are basically preparing for the Bruins this week.
And it's funny because Curt Cignetti's normally one of the more brash guys. He's one of the more he likes to come out and say, we're going to kick some butt and we're going to take names. We're going to do all that. And he's like, we're going to go chill and we're just going to let our play take the talking. For UCLA, though, it's been the positive, upbeat personality of Tim Skipper. There's been all the talk of, oh, Tim Skipper gets no credit. I'm like, I think he gets enough credit. He's getting all the talk shows. He's done a lot. And UCLA has won all the games when Jerry Neuheisel's been the offensive coordinator. Who doesn't get enough credit is Kevin Coyle, the new defensive coordinator, who took over for UCLA's Ikaika Malloy, who is much beloved in the program, and came along, put in a new defense, and they're making plays against Maryland, dominating Michigan State, and made enough plays against a fully healthy Penn State. That doesn't get enough credit. A fully healthy Penn State and the Bruins made enough plays. They gave a lot of points, but Coyle, for the most part, has faced Northwestern, Penn State, and all these things. And the Bruins have changed everything dramatically in a physical front against the likes of Maryland last week. Should have had 5 interceptions against Maryland. They dropped them, Jacob. And that's where the cliche comes in. That's why they're DBs. So the most important thing is UCLA. I read this ESPN article about Tim Skipper and the Bruins. They've become more physical in practice. They emphasize hitting. Sunday's not an off day. They go get it to work. They have Mondays off. Physical. And if you're going to play a team like Indiana, you have to be physical. You have to match that intensity in Bloomington. Early game, your body clock. But that's, I think, the difference. The intensity, just the ability to make everything stack up with small wins and be a physical team.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is there's clearly a difference on both sides of the football for UCLA offensively and defensively. We'll talk about Nico in just a moment, but do you think the offense has improved more or the defense has improved more? Because in the first 3 games where Deshaun Foster was still the head coach and then he got fired, you give up 43 to Utah, 30 to UNLV, 35 to New Mexico, but you only scored 10, 23, and 10 in those games. And since then, everything has sort of turned around. And so which side of the ball is more improved in your mind and could have a bigger impact tomorrow or on Saturday, the defense or the offense for UCLA?
Well, I have these numbers. I think Mike Regalado, he covers the Bruins, and he put these numbers out. And this is what UCLA's first 4 games look like and last 3 games look like. And coming into the year, UCLA was always going to be led by their offense. Always.
Yeah.
So, but the turnaround defensively has been very impressive. In the first 4 games, offensively, UCLA had just over 320 yards of total offense, 140 yards on the grounds, namely a lot of Nico, and then 180 yards passing the football. The numbers that have jumped up are 420 yards of offense in the last 3 games, over 100 yards. The big difference, UCLA's running for more than 230 plus yards on the ground. So they become more physical. They have unlocked Nico like they did in that Penn State game, but it's the fact they've gotten their running backs holes to run through. And they've had 3 or 4 different guys get carries and make plays, from Jalen Berger to Thomas to Woods to Anthony Freeze in the last game. So it's not just one running back, it's running back by committee in various ways for different reasons. So that's been the big thing, running the football and hitting those timely crossing patterns, and Nico avoiding the turnover, unlike what he did versus Maryland, where he had 3. Defensively, as we keep this numbers once again, the total defense, 400 yards prior to the firing or prior to the 3-game winning streak, the last 3 games, 315 yards allowed, the total defense. Excuse me. The big downtick, the rushing defense allowed 215 yards. It's down to 123, Jacob.
Wow.
123. And then you look at the pass defense, those numbers are up, but you could lead that too. UCLA's been leading, so teams have to throw the football. Scoring offense, up 20 points in the last 3 games. Scoring defense has allowed almost 10 less points per game. That's a huge jump on both sides of the football. And you can it namely goes back to the point I was already making. Physical front, being able to rush the passer, stop the run, and then running the football. Because if UCLA can't run the football, I mean, what are you doing? And they can. They have an athletic quarterback, lots of running backs, and they have some talent in the O-line. They've simplified the scheme, but those numbers showcase it's been physicality that's made the difference and the emphasis for UCLA's turnaround.
And you look at the up and down play of Nico Iamaleava, right? That's what he did at Tennessee. The highs were high and the lows were low. And through the first 3 games, the lows were really low. And it was like, oh no, here we go. I know you were talking about it, possibility of a fraud. I mean, there was a lot happening, a lot of emotions there because it just didn't look good. And now we're on the uptick again, right? Nico Iamaleava looks like he's a competent quarterback. I know he had a couple of picks last week against Maryland.
But Maryland's got a good defense with picks.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, they do. And so have you seen the confidence better from Nico? And are you confident in him going on the road to a place like Indiana? You guys also have a trip to Columbus in there as well. Do you trust him to make plays on the road in the new system that he's operating in?
Well, their road win against Michigan State, the Bruins went in there, looked a little sloppy on their first drive against the Spartans, and then put up 38 points and blew them out by 25. So I think the Bruins can do it. Obviously, this won't be their first 9 a.m. body clock if you're an LA kid in terms of the noon Eastern time kick. I think he can, but it's going to be more on the ground. Now, the Bruins have to be able to hit a couple of shots vertically. They have to avoid a big turnover down the field. Now, it's one thing if UCLA, they've been extra aggressive going forward on 4th down and been elite. I think Curt Cignetti said the number was like close to 70% on 4th downs, and they've been close to 50% third down. That has been huge. So when they don't get it, they've been getting it. And so is UCLA going to have a bag of tricks that can throw teams off sides like they did against Penn State? Just simply go for it with a fake punt. This game, I think, will largely be won and lost by Nico's ability to scramble and hit 1 to 2 plays vertically. I've had my thoughts about how UCLA can throw in wrinkles from the previous offense just to throw Indiana off, but it's going to come down to Nico making some plays with his legs, just like he did against Penn State to win this game.
What's funny is the common opponent that Indiana and UCLA have, the only common opponent to this point is Michigan State. UCLA beat Michigan State 38-13. You want to know the final score of Indiana versus Michigan State? 38-13. How about that? Both games, same score, 2 different teams going after Michigan State. Maybe it's a Spartans thing. Maybe it's not even so much about the Hoosiers and the Bruins, but UCLA clearly has figured it out and turned it around. And Indiana, on the other hand, they just keep rolling. We talk about the Hoosiers and how the 2nd-ranked team in the country can avoid the upset. We talk about that next here on this Locked On Crossover. This Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and UCLA is brought to you by Mazda's, moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. All right, Zach, for UCLA, this week's moving the game forward. What moment was it against that Michigan or that Maryland team against the Terps? What moment moved the game forward for UCLA last week?
Well, there was a moment where Nico came off the ground looking injured, and we thought this run was done. He came back after what looked to be a horrifying knee injury and led UCLA down the field for a game-winning field goal. So the fact that he embodied the toughness, came through, delivered the win, that was the grit UCLA needed for the win for Maryland. How about Indiana, Jacob?
I'm going with the 4 touchdown passes from Fernando Mendoza. Mr. Heisman Mendoza himself. He just continues to step in, deliver, takes care of the football, and finds all of his receivers. That's how the Hoosiers won last week. That's how UCLA won last week. And those are the moments that move the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, welcome back to this Locked On Crossover Hoosiers and UCLA. He is Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, host of Locked On UCLA. I'm Jacob Goins, host of Locked On Hoosiers. Make sure you subscribe to our respective YouTube channels if that's where you are watching this today. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your score predictions down below. We'd love to see what you have to say about the Hoosiers and the Bruins. And hey, if you're listening on audio, follow us on there, turn on those notifications as well so you never miss a new episode of UCLA and Hoosiers. And look, the UCLA story's fun. And I think it has caught the attention of Indiana and Curt Cignetti based off of his comments this week. But, Zach, let's not forget, the Hoosiers are the second-ranked team in the country. I mean, we're playing pretty well, pretty good football over here in case you haven't noticed.
I would think Indiana has probably two of the best wins in college football. I don't think of a team that has as good a wins. You go to Oregon and you win pretty decisively. You absolutely demolish Illinois, demolish them to the point where they're not even thought as a dark horse contender anymore in the Big Ten, and then they go get demolished by Ohio State. But Indiana put a thumping on them. That's probably why this line in this game is so big, as Indiana favorites as home, as they should be, a top 2 team in the country against the under 500 team. But what makes them so special in 2025 compared to 24?
Oh, well, I think for Indiana, last year in 2024, you saw the highlights of Curtis Rourke. You had the run game. You had some good receivers. But in the two biggest games of the year, Ohio State and Notre Dame, you just got bullied in the trenches, right? The offensive line couldn't hold up, especially in the playoff game against Notre Dame. And your defensive line was good, but you couldn't get pressure on Ohio State. You couldn't get pressure on Notre Dame, and those quarterbacks picked you apart. That's the difference. Is this year in 2025 for the Hoosiers, who are ranked second in the nation, you have an offensive line that's given Mendoza all the time in the world to do what he needs to do. They create run lanes for the running backs or for Mendoza when he needs to. They give him time to make the right decision, and they're able to shuffle around and do what they need to do to give him some time. And then defensively, that's been the unit of this Indiana team that just makes it a nightmare for every quarterback that goes up against them, because they get home, they put pressure, they come from all different angles, they disguise their blitzes, they bring it from the second and third levels. Everybody gets involved, but they get to the quarterback. That's what they did against Luke Altmaier. That's what they did against Gronowski at Iowa. They did it against Dante Moore. The very first play of the game, of the Oregon game in Eugene, was a sack by the Indiana defense. I expect them to do that again on Saturday against Nico, but maybe a little bit more reserved, because we saw that last week against Michigan State for this Indiana defense because of the ability for Aiden Childs, right, to get out, make plays with his legs and be athletic. I'm wondering if Indiana goes with a little bit more of a reserved approach defensively, just so Nico doesn't take off and run. But that's the biggest difference from a year ago to this year. It's the big boys up front that make an impact on both sides of the football.
It seems like the year-to-year transition from Indiana to 24 to 25, physical. UCLA, the in-season transition, the physicality of this team from week 5 to week 6 in the Penn State game.
That's the Big Ten, right? That's how you
it's the physicality.
Yeah.
And that's where it makes me think, if UCLA is able to keep up and be physical with Indiana, that's where this game could be a lot closer than expected. But you talk about the Heisman type season of Fernando Mendoza. What makes him the one-time Cal quarterback, UCLA transfer target before they went to Joey Aguilar? What makes him so special this year? Better, worse, the same as Curtis Rourke? Talk about the former Golden Bear.
Man, that's a tough question, but I think you have to say he's better than Curtis Rourke. And I love Curtis Rourke. I think he is somebody that could have a sneaky good career longevity-wise in the NFL, and somebody that I truly believe, Zach, if he didn't get injured last year with the hand and thumb problems, I think he would have been in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. But he had the... God, it's so hard to, I don't want to talk bad about Curtis Rourke because there's nothing bad to talk about. Mendoza just has a little bit more. Mendoza has the quicker decision making. Mendoza has the true NFL level throws. There's a reason he's the betting favorite with our friends at FanDuel to not only win the Heisman Trophy, but be the #1 overall pick in next year's NFL draft. It's because he can make the next level throws. He can make those back shoulders. He can lead receivers to the sideline. He can let it fly and let it rip before they come out of their break because he knows where it's going to go. He knows where the receiver's supposed to be, and he can put it where only his guy can make a play, which sounds simple, but he's making throws that should not be done at the college level. And that's what makes Mendoza so scary. And the few times he's turned the football over this year, he's bounced back immediately. He threw a pick against Oregon, the pick 6, by the way, against Oregon, bounced right back and threw a touchdown pass. Did it the week before against Iowa, threw a pick. Hawkeyes couldn't convert. He takes a shot the very next possession, hits Elijah Surratt for the game-winning touchdown. That's what makes Mendoza different. The few times he gets rattled, he bounces back immediately. And he's making throws that, again, I don't see anybody else in college football making, and he can absolutely pick a defense apart. If you play zone, he'll pick it apart in front. If you play man, the Indiana receivers are too good. They'll go by you. He'll place it in their fingertips, and they're gone for 6. And so Mendoza just really has it all, and I can't wait to see him the rest of the way against some of these defenses that hopefully are a little bit vulnerable, maybe this weekend against UCLA, but Mendoza's the real deal in terms of the Heisman Trophy and playing on Sundays.
And here's the thing. Do you think, Jacob, were you as shocked as I was to hear that Curt Cignetti was saying, wait a minute, we got the Heisman? Well, he didn't say this, but, we have the Heisman level quarterback. We have all this fun stuff. And he comes out first thing to say, 3-0 UCLA. Was that what you were expecting him to say? I'm not going to say foul mouth coach, but he certainly likes to run his mouth.
Yeah, it was definitely different. But I think that just shows who Curt Cignetti is in terms of his respect, right? That he has for the opponents on the schedule, the studying that him and his staff do, because a ton of credit goes to the guys underneath him as well. But they clearly had been in the office first thing on Sunday. This is a guy, Zach, that just got a contract extension through 2033, making $11.6 million a year. You just beat the brakes off of Michigan State, and they're right back in the office Sunday morning doing prep for UCLA, and dropped a bunch of those stats that you mentioned and I talked about earlier in the week on Locked On Hoosiers. They are not overlooking this UCLA team, but they're not scared of this UCLA team either. I had some conversations earlier in the week on my show about that. They respect them, though, because it's hard to judge a team based off of really 3 games. And that's what Indiana's doing, because that's the turnaround that the Bruins have made. I know they fired Foster after the 0-3 start. You competed with Northwestern, and you've since turned it on. You have a smaller sample size. You have less to go off of and less to prepare for. And a game like this, and I know we're going to talk matchups and give our picks here in just a moment, but losing this game at home is not acceptable for Indiana at this point because of what you have done already this season, what you have left on your schedule, and the aspirations that you have. Losing this game at home could derail everything. And I think that's why you heard Curt Cignetti speak the way that he did in his opening presser this week, because they are not going to underprepare or overlook this UCLA team come Saturday afternoon.
And I think the final thing we got for this segment, what everybody wants to know, is Indiana, we've already talked about this, Jacob, but we'll bring it up again. Are they the same without Tino? Because UCLA looks completely different without Tino Sinceri. Jerry Neuheisel is the wonderkind that we thought Tino would come out to be in LA as the offensive guru, when in reality, UCLA's got the calm UCLA Bruin legend that is Jerry Neuheisel, calling plays, people telling him he's going to be the future UCLA head coach in years down the line, the hottest offensive coordinator. If he does it against Indiana, huge. But what's the deal with Tino? I thought he was supposed to be something cool, Jacob.
I know, man. I know. I was sad to see him go, and I was super excited. I just think he walked into a bad situation. And the fact that you get canned 4 games or 3 games into your first ever true offensive coordinator job, because remember, he split duties when he was in Bloomington. So this was his first true full-time offensive coordinator role. I just don't think that was fair. Now, that you could call it fair or not, that's just how it works. But he's going to be fine. Tino's going to be fine. He's going to find another job. He'll be okay, and he'll have a chance to prove how legitimate he really is on the offensive side of the football, especially working with quarterbacks. But I mean, Mike Shanahan's done a fantastic job here at Indiana in terms of calling plays and getting this offense rolling. So I don't know, man. I feel bad for Tino. He's going to figure it out. But I'm telling you right now, the Indiana Hoosiers are just fine. But we need to talk some matchups. We need to talk predictions and make our picks for Indiana and UCLA, the Hoosiers and the Bruins on Saturday for the big noon kickoff. Can you believe it? We talk about all that in our final segment here on this Locked On Crossover. This Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and UCLA is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time that you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. All right, for UCLA, who was it? Who was the MVP a week ago, Zach? And then does that person need to be the MVP again this week for UCLA?
Last week, it was Anthony Frias II. He broke off a big 55-yard touchdown run and had the big run bouncing off multiple defenders to set up the game-winning field goal for UCLA against Maryland. I'm not sure if it's necessarily Frias this week, but the running back room, as we've discussed earlier, Jacob, they as a whole unit have been the difference in this whole overlay, with just changing things and going more physical up front. Anthony Frias. How about you, Jacob?
I'm going with Omar Cooper. He's the number 2 option in the receiver room for the Indiana Hoosiers behind Elijah Surratt. He doesn't get enough love. He had 8 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown a week ago against Michigan State. If you double up Surratt, you better watch out for Omar Cooper. So just like those players delivered for Indiana and UCLA, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. This Locked On crossover episode of Hoosiers and UCLA is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So the spread right around 24-25 for Indiana and UCLA. I think it's a little much, but maybe you think the Hoosiers are just going to roll in this game on Saturday. So you can sprinkle a little bit on Indiana, or if you think the Bruins come in and make it interesting, you can drop some on UCLA as well and make the game just that much more interesting. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started at FanDuel.com. All right, final segment on this Locked On crossover, UCLA and Hoosiers. We're talking Bruins, we're talking Indiana, and a big noon kickoff on Saturday. You mentioned something earlier that I want to pick your brain on for just a second here, Zach. 9 a.m. local time? Is that right? 9 a.m. LA time that this game will be kicking off, and seems to be a talking point around the Big Ten this season because of all the cross-country travel and things, but is it really that big of a deal for you at the end of the day? Like, isn't it just a football game that you got to get up and get ready for regardless of the kickoff time?
I think naturally, having traveled with teams before, like, that does make a big difference. But when you're playing Northwestern and it's 11 a.m. local, I think that extra hour kind of makes a difference in the East Coast when, 12 p.m. to noon can make a big difference for these guys to warm up, get up. But the Bruins already went and had one of these early kickoffs and then dominated Michigan State. They went out and just dominated the Spartans. So they're kind of used to it. This is now 2 years for some of these players in the Big Ten. We see teams do struggle coming west, or for some of these West Coast teams going east in these earlier games as well. But UCLA, even last year, when they still had Deshaun Foster, won some of those early games. It is absolutely something to monitor. But the Bruins and Tim Skipper have been so upbeat, so just pepped up that they're going to be ready to go in this one.
And so as we talk some matchups here for a minute or two before we make our final predictions for this game, again on Saturday, UCLA traveling to Indiana. The Hoosiers ranked 2nd in the country. UCLA really trying to make something of this season and push towards bowl eligibility. A matchup for you, whether it's offensively, defensively, heck, even special teams, if that's something you want to highlight. A matchup for UCLA that they could have the advantage in that can make the difference on Saturday.
I think it's going to be Nico's legs, right? Because you can talk about the physicality, run the ball, but if you mix in the idea that Indiana might blitz a lot, UCLA just saw a lot of exotic looks from Maryland. They had that in the week prior. Not a lot of teams get that look in the Big Ten and then play Indiana. So I think the benefit for UCLA is Maryland threw everything at UCLA to try and get that win, and Nico didn't look that good. So I would think with a week of practice, seeing something, it might not be the same thing, but with all the pressure, that could lead to something for Nico running the ball, working and making better decisions. Now, that has to be proven on the field, but that is a mini benefit of poor play last week. How about for Indiana, Jacob?
Well, it's funny you bring up Nico and his running ability because I'm talking about the linebackers for Indiana, which has been such a steady piece for this Indiana defense. Aiden Fisher, Elijah Hardy, and Isaiah Jones. Those are your second, third, and fourth leading tacklers on this Indiana defense, and they're just so disciplined. For any of you Bruins fans who haven't seen Aiden Fisher play yet this season in college football, just be ready. He's one of the best linebackers in the country. He'll be starting on Sundays this time next season because they're just so disciplined in what they do. They know where they're supposed to be. They know where to contain, where to release, where to let somebody go, where to not let them go. And then just open field tackling is such a big focus point for this Indiana defense at all three levels, right? Whether it's a defensive lineman getting in the backfield, if it's a linebacker out on the edge, or if it's somebody in the secondary coming up to make a one-on-one play, open field tackling is a huge part of what Indiana does to limit those big plays. And I think the linebackers are going to have their eyes on Nico Iamaleava all day long and not let him beat you with his legs, make him sit in the pocket and pick you apart with his arm. I don't trust him to do that. And I think Indiana's defensive line will get home if he can't get rid of the football quickly. So I think Indiana's offense will be fine as we work our way into some picks and predictions here, Zach. I think Indiana's offense will be fine. I think they'll put up the points that they need to. I just don't trust that UCLA offense to score and move the football up and down on the Hoosier defense. If Oregon couldn't do it, I just don't trust UCLA to do it. So I think Indiana wins. Again, I don't know if I'm touching the 24, 25 point spread here, but I'll take the Hoosiers to win comfortably. I'm thinking somewhere like 34, 13. So it would be around that spread, give or take. But I think Indiana wins, and I think they kind of win going away.
I think UCLA can cover for sure. I think that's a big spread. UCLA's played so much better than what that spread indicates. That's kind of like a medium between the 0-4 start and the 3-0 start, and seeing what Indiana's done against good teams. I think that's kind of a, we're going to reward Indiana for being so good, but also like, well, UCLA, we have to see what they're going to do on the road.
I think it is an overcorrection. I think you're right about that.
And the thing is, for UCLA, the Bruins are going to have to play from out in front like they did against Penn State. They're going to have to score a touchdown. I'm not sure if they can go with the onside kick again, but they need something where they need a score and a stop and a score, like a 10-0, 13-0, some lead like that, playing out in front and forcing Indiana to maybe get out of their rhythm and play from behind by multiple scores. If that doesn't happen, I think maybe UCLA can keep pace. I don't know if it's in the second half, in the first half, but at some point there might be a mistake made, and there probably will be by a Nico or a UCLA. They go for it on fourth down, it doesn't work, because this is most likely the most physical team the Bruins have faced this year. Since Utah, I know Northwestern was really physical and kept the Bruins off skelter. I don't really know the score off my head. I think Indiana can win this by around 17 points plus. That's a little easy cop out there, but the Bruins do cover. But I think this is an intriguing game, and everybody's eyes should be glued to see if this story is continuing to be real.
Yeah, I mean, if this is a game in the fourth quarter, I would not be surprised. And I think Indiana would have to come and find some ways to win, but I do think that they do kind of get this thing handled in the second half and hopefully pull away at home. If this is in Los Angeles, maybe a different story because of the travel things, but I think Indiana's going to be okay. But you have UCLA to cover. It's the Hoosiers and the Bruins, Indiana and UCLA. Big noon kickoff on Saturday in Bloomington at Memorial Stadium. He is Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer of Locked On UCLA. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for listening, watching today. However you find us, however you follow us, we thank you for doing so. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, drop your score predictions in the comments below, and follow us on all of your audio platforms as well. So until next time, Bruins fans and Hoosiers fans, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.